Welcome back to another episode of UFC Casuals. I'm Bobby, along with my co-host Andrew, and today we'll be looking at UFC Singapore, talking about Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler, possibly happening later this year. It sure seems like it will. Talk a little bit about some future matchups. UFC Paris, we'll get into that at the end, of course. Yeah, we won't waste any time jumping right into it. The main event at UFC Singapore, Max Holloway, Korean Zombie. Very entertaining fight. Obviously played out as we expected with Max getting a win. I didn't think he'd get a knockout. I thought it'd be a 5-round beating for Max. But he got TKZ out of there in round 3. It looked like Zombie knew he was down 2 rounds, kind of had to go out there, just leave it all out there, and he did. And then, honestly, I'd rather have seen him get put out a little earlier than take a beating for 5 rounds.
Especially after that second round when he got dropped badly.
Yeah.
And then the Darce choke as well that Max put on him there. I mean, I can't believe he didn't go out cold. So the writing, like you said, the writing was kind of on the wall from there. You're down 2-0. I'm sure the gas tank was fading a little bit. Max's gas tank isn't going to go away. He was going to be relentless for 5 rounds. So, guns a-blazing, throw it all to the wall, and he got slumped. But that's the Zombie, man. That's just how he is. And it was a great way to go out.
I'll give him a little bit of credit. He did catch Max a couple times. He looked good in round 1. Didn't wobble him or anything like that, but he looked like he stunned him a couple times on the feet. So I'll give Zombie credit. He looked good. He looked like he's still capable. I mean, he looks like he can beat a bunch of top 10 fighters at featherweight. Obviously not going to beat someone at Max's caliber, but who, outside of Volk, who is at featherweight. So.
Right.
Not a bad performance. Sucks to see him go out like that, but, he left it all out there, and he looked solid in times.
I definitely wouldn't have liked for this to have been his retirement fight because he definitely looked like he had some more in the tank there. He could have definitely, like you mentioned, beaten some top 10 guys. But this is the fight he wanted. So, they granted it to him in Asia, right? You could hear the support from the crowd there, in Singapore. So it was a good send-off. They were singing his entrance song on the way in and the way out. It was amazing scenes. And, it wasn't the result he wanted. It was a tough opponent. I don't know what people were expecting. But, good way to retire.
Yeah, an incredible way to go out. And then speaking of that crowd, got to come back to Singapore. That was incredible. The crowd, man, they made it perfect. That was such a beautiful moment for a way to end his career, as you can see at the bottom. Him hugging his wife. It was beautiful. It was poetic. The whole crowd singing the song. It was awesome. So
and the last time they were there too for the pay-per-view last year for the Yuri fight when he beat Glover, and I remember I think Zhang Wei Li knocked out Joanna on that card. They went ape shit. So Singapore just it creates bangers and the crowd's always into it. So definitely go back soon.
Yeah, I'd love to see them come back every year, at least for a fight night. That was an incredible moment. Moving on to the co-main event, Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann didn't look good in this fight. Really questionable decision-making. I'm fine with the decision. I know a lot of people had it as 2-1 for Spann, but I didn't see it. I had Smith pretty clearly taking rounds 1 and 3. What did you make of this one?
Just kind of Anthony Smith looking past his prime as we kind of thought he would. And then Ryan Spann just not being able to capitalize at all, especially after hurting Anthony Smith in the second round like that. To what, I was saying as it was happening live with that eye, that it looks like it could be a fractured orbital or something. Just the way it was swelling immediately like that to get a black eye that quickly. You got to take advantage of that, an injured opponent, and put him out of there. And, Spann wasn't able to do that. And Smith just kind of, controlled the range. And it wasn't a pretty fight by any means. I could definitely see the decision having gone the other way. I mean. But, they gave the decision to Smith. I didn't mind it because Spann didn't do enough. And both fighters did not look like they will be competing for the 205 title in their careers. So I don't really know what to make of this fight. It was just kind of what I expected, but also I wanted to see more out of both. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was just a volume thing, especially with round 3. I mean, Spann, he did so much damage in round 2. It wasn't enough to be a 10-8 because Smith still had his moments. It was a 10-9 round for Spann in round 2. You would have think going to that third round that Spann was going to capitalize on it. I think he might even get a finish in round 3. He wasn't able to do anything. He didn't look like he wanted to throw anything. It was weird. It just the decision making made no sense. And to go along with that, I mean, he didn't throw a leg kick until round 3, when we saw, as evident in the last fight against Johnny Walker and so many times before, it's a big weakness of Anthony Smith. And he didn't throw a single leg kick until round 3. I can't wrap my head around it. And when he got that knockdown on Smith in round 2, where he busted up his eye like that, is really questionable decision making on the ground. Barely threw any ground and pound. He's just looking for weird positions. He's not good. He's not good. Ryan Spann is not good. Should have beat Anthony Smith, no problem, especially given the damage he did in round 2. But his decision making just terrible, I guess.
And considering he's already lost to Anthony Smith before, you need to go out there and make a statement, because you're on the rise. You should be the fighter on the rise here, with Anthony Smith on the decline, like you mentioned, in his last fights with the legs being damaged the way they were, various injuries, and injuring him in the second round. He had that eye messed up. You got to take advantage. You got to get a finish here. You're the younger fighter. You're on the come up, and he needed to make a statement, and he just didn't make it. And, people saying 2-1 Spann, I don't care, because – he needed to make a statement, and he wouldn't have made it with a 29-28 anyway. So, whatever, a loss or a W in that way, it doesn't matter to me. He still didn't look good. So, bad performance from Ryan Spann. And Anthony Smith just looks kind of old. I don't know.
Yeah, Smith won this fight, obviously. He's going to stick around where he's at in the rankings. I don't see him in the title picture still. There's just no path back to that for him to get a title shot. I thought if he would have lost this fight, he would have retired. Obviously, he won. I think he's got maybe 1 or 2 more in him. But if he loses his next fight in an ugly way, I think he goes out on that note. But Ryan Spann, I don't know where to go with him from here. I mean, he's so hit or miss. He like a lot of people said, he's the glass cannon. I mean, he's just not someone who's going to make his way up the rankings. He's inconsistent. He has some fluke knockouts here and there, like the Reyes one. But that's against a chinless fighter, so I don't really put much stock into that. He's just not good. He's not good, and he's like a fringe top 15 guy, I think.
Yeah, he was able to get a win over Dominic Reyes, who had just gotten brutally slept twice in a row. So, that tells you the caliber of fighters he's knocking out and getting finishes over. But, I mean, it sucks because you can see the talent's there, and he admitted in past fights that he doesn't train enough. And I don't know if that's still an issue. I mean, he says he takes it serious. He says he takes it seriously now. So I'm going to take him at his word. I don't know. But, I mean, maybe that's just what he's going to be, just a fringe top 15 guy, And he has his moments where he puts on exciting fights. So I'm not going to say cut him, for having close fights with ranked guys still, even though it was a little boring. But, he still puts on fun fights. So I'm not saying cut him, but he's just never going to get in that title picture, doesn't look like, sadly.
Yeah. Speaking of questionable decision-making, we're going to talk about the third to last fight of this card, Giga Chikadze versus Alex Caceres. Why Caceres didn't shoot for a single takedown all the fight was a little confusing to me, considering Chikadze doesn't have any answer for anything on the ground. But regardless, I won't take anything away from Giga. Looked good on the feet, as expected. 30-27, I think it's fair, but the rounds were close. All 3 rounds were close, but Giga had the slight edge. I would have probably had it 29-28 to him. I'd have to rewatch the fight, though, to be sure, just because of how close those rounds were. Still fairly fun fight, not a ton of fireworks. I mean, nobody was getting wobbled, but some good shots were landed. It was a solid fight.
And Caceres seemed to have the speed advantage for me. He just wasn't landing as much, and the output from Chikadze was good. He needed a good performance here. And I will say, I did see after the fight that Caceres did break his arm in the first round. So that definitely explains the no grappling. And he did seem to have like a kick-heavy game plan, especially in those last 2 rounds, just trying to show the speed of his kicks. But Giga, that's where he excels in the kicks.
Yeah.
And he really beat up the body and obviously the arms. I mean, to break his arm with a kick in the first round. So just took advantage, outstruck him, and it was a solid performance. I would have liked to see, a more dominant performance from Giga. He needed to, come back in an exciting way. But he definitely won. Like, there's no doubt about that. So I can't criticize the performance too much. He looked good.
Yeah, it looked solid. It wasn't the most moving performance. Like we've seen in the past from him, but yeah, still a great performance. Good bounce back, something we needed to see out of him. If he would have lost this fight, that would have been trouble for him. Yeah, I wasn't aware of Caceres' broken arm. That makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
It did seem a lot of times like he was going for those highlight reel kicks, those the big knockouts, but he didn't really do much to set it up. He didn't really try and chip away at Chikadze and you know set those up. It just seemed like he was just throwing them and hoping for something to land at times.
Mm.
Um, and Giga, he looked as he always does. I mean, great kicks to the body, like you mentioned. That's his forte, the Giga kick.
Mm.
Wasn't able to get a finish, but still a great performance.
Yeah, I couldn't get him out of there with any of those body kicks. Caceres looked strong. I mean, he ate him. So
Yeah.
a lot of people can't say they've eaten the Giga kick and left unharmed. So, which he still left harmed, but not in the way you would have. Yeah, not in the way you would have expected with him laying, in the fetal position on the mat, with his liver destroyed. But Caceres, I don't know how he's ranked. He's lost a lot of fights. I was shocked when I saw he was ranked 15th. So that kind of tells you something about the state of featherweight at this point.
Yeah.
But Giga needed a win. He got it against a ranked guy, surprisingly ranked. And he looked good. I'm excited for his next fight because he is a fun fighter, no doubt. You mentioned the holes in his grappling, but who's going to take him down? It really hasn't happened in any of his fights. So we'll see. Maybe give him a grappler and see if he's improved at all. I don't know.
Well, he did call out Yair Rodriguez on a pay-per-view. He wants to fight in the main event of a pay-per-view for the first time, which I'd love to see that. I think a fight against Yair would be just incredible. That's a perfect matchup. Timeline makes sense because Yair lost at 290. So, probably took some time off from that. Giga didn't take a whole lot of damage in this fight, so their timelines are probably pretty similar. That's a fight you can make later this year on a card we will be talking about in a few minutes.
In December?
Maybe in December. Or maybe you can even squeeze it on 295 if Giga can make that turnaround. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I'd like that. Moving on, Rinya Nakamura versus Fernie Garcia. Nakamura just looked dominant on the ground. He didn't really seem to have that finishing ability. He wasn't able to get the finish. He had times where I thought he was going to get it with the north-south choke and then the armbar as well. There's a couple times I thought he might get Fernie to tap, but wasn't able to get it done inside the distance. Still a great performance. Clear win from him. Not much else to say.
Clear skill gap in the grappling in this one for sure. And that man Nakamura loves him the north-south position. You don't see that very often, but he is a big fan of that position. Going for a north-south choke, which is super rare. Yeah. And then obviously that armbar, I thought it was over. I was like, please tap, but he got out of it. So survived, didn't get finished, and Nakamura, good looking prospect. I mean, bantamweight just looks. It just feels like there's a new prospect just emerging in that division every month. So exciting division, exciting prospect, good performance.
Yeah. Moving on, Aaron Blanchfield versus Talia Santos. Not the most exciting fight. I know Blanchfield, she's had finishes in a lot of her recent fights. Wasn't able to get a sub here. Kind of dominated this fight in the clinch and on the ground. We talked about this over text. Santos kind of threw that fight in round two. It looked like when she went for that trip and ended up on her back. If she wouldn't have done that, she probably would have won round 1 and 2 and then have gone to a 29-28 decision. But that costed her big time.
Especially considering it looked like she had such a huge speed advantage and power advantage on the feet. To get in the clinch like that and your immediate thought not to be disengaged, but to go for a trip against a wrestler like that who even if she got her down, who's to say Blanchard off her back wouldn't have been able to work her way on top, just how good her wrestling is herself. So I didn't understand that move at all, and it backfired big time, and she ended up on her own back, and the wrestling was like a clear advantage for Blanchfield, which she utilized for the next 2 rounds. Santos looked tired. So, good win for Blanchfield. It puts her right in that title picture. It wasn't an amazing performance. She didn't get a finish like we've seen in fights past, like against Andrade, who that was a big win for her. And, so to not finish Santos, it's, we would have liked to see that to give her that boost for the title. But, a win over someone who's just fought for the title as recently as last year is a great win, and it puts her right in that mix. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone who took it to a really close decision against Shevchenko.
Yeah.
Santos, it was really close in that fight. So for Blanchfield to go out there and pretty clearly win, I don't think there was much question about that. She took rounds 2 and 3. That's pretty impressive. I don't know if it's enough for her to get that title shot. She's still really young. She's got room to improve. So, the UFC might not be looking for her to, take that leap just yet, especially because wasn't the most, exciting performance, wasn't the most dominant performance. Now, if she had gone out there and gotten another sub or 30-27 Santos, you could probably say she deserves that title shot. But, there's a lot of people in that picture. So it's hard to say if the title shot's next for her, but she's definitely in the title picture.
Especially with someone like Fior fighting this weekend, who's above her in the rankings, who can probably is next especially if she beats Rose, or Rose could jump it if she wants to stay at flyweight. So maybe she fights the loser of Valentina and Grasso, and this later this month, and maybe that's a fight to make. But she's right there for sure. She showed off her gas tank in this fight, which she hasn't had to do in fights past. So there was stuff we saw out of her that we haven't gotten to see yet, which was interesting. And she's right there, so it was a good win.
Yeah. Then Junior Tafa knocks out Parker Porter. Nobody's surprised. Not much to say about that. Pretty much the same outcome as the Justin Tafa Parker Porter fight. I don't know what to say.
Go back to our preview. Go back to our preview and see the slander we did on Parker Porter, and that's all you need to know how we saw this fight was going to go. So
replay that, and as it's pretty much a recap. It's pretty much a recap. I mean, we said exactly what ended up happening. So
yeah,
just go run that tape back, and that's our thoughts on the fight. So.
And maybe you'll see that we aren't UFC casuals after all. But no, I think anybody with a brain could have seen this coming. So
yeah,
Parker Porter, you stink.
Yeah, I guess they're just going to keep feeding him to. I don't even want to call him prospects because heavyweight is terrible outside the top 50. That's only like top 10 even. I mean, it's just garbage. There's some decent guys, but like I don't even want to call Junior Tafa a prospect. I mean, he lost to Mo Usman. I mean, like these aren't like up and comers that Parker Porter's losing to. He's just not good.
Give Parker Porter to heavy hitters who can get a highlight reel KO and help out their highlight mixtape, and let's move on. Just feed him to people with punching power, and let's
let him keep putting him on the first fight on a prelim on the main card of a fight night. Let him get some excitement going. Let a round one knockout happen.
Let the
crowd hype going into those last 5 fights on a fight night card.
Let the crowd see a weirdly built fat guy get knocked out, and they love it.
I love it. So yeah, there's some more Parker Porter slander. Moving on, we'll talk about the winner of the main event, Max Holloway. Some possible matchups for him. I'm looking at Aljo as my top choice here. I'd like to see Aljo move up like he said he would. I'm not sure if you will. I'm hoping the UFC puts some pressure on him to move up because he just kind of stalls the division if he stays there at 135. Mm-hmm. I know he was a good champion. I know he got a lot of heat for how he won the belt and some of the wins he had during his reign. But he was a good champ. But it's time to move up. He cuts a ton of weight. Just go fight at 145. There's a more clearer future for you. I think him and Holloway, that's a perfect fight to make. And I don't want to see Holloway keep fighting strikers. I mean, we know how that's going to go every single time. There's not much question about that. So I'd like to see, Holloway versus a top-level grappler. We had a little technical difficulty there. Sorry about that. Yeah, Holloway versus a top-level grappler and Aljo. Something to test his ground game, I guess. And if Aljo wins, then he probably gets a title shot.
And with all the strikers that Max keeps fighting, like you mentioned, like it's just every single guy that comes up to fight him at featherweight right now, it's like, oh, but this guy has the punching power. Maybe he can put Max out. And the output is just always too much. And he has such a huge striking advantage in the output part of it that he ends up with, hundreds of more strikes than his opponent. And it's like an easy 50-45. So I'd like to see Max either, like you mentioned, fight a grappler, right? Aljo coming up, maybe they're both one win away at that division from getting back to Volk. I know we don't want to see a fourth fight between Max and Volk, especially after 3 being so dominant for Volk. Mm-hmm. But, at this point, who is Volk going to fight in that division? I mean, Max Holloway off of like 3 big wins. Why not? Do it again. I mean, they've all been close outside of the last one. So either that or I think Max, because there's no more prospects for him at featherweight to beat. I mean, he hasn't fought Josh Emmett. Who cares? Right? I've seen people saying like, oh, fight who you haven't fought yet, Josh Emmett. We don't think he would piece apart Josh Emmett. Did we see what Topuria did to Josh Emmett?
Yeah, Max would abuse him. And I guess the Topuria Volk fight isn't booked or anything, but it's pretty much confirmed at this point. I mean, it seems like it's certain.
Maybe December. Maybe.
Maybe. But you don't want to sacrifice Topuria because you have an easy title fight, him versus Volk. Nobody's going to question it. You make that fight, but if you risk him against Max, then you risk him losing to Max, which is a good possibility. I mean, Max is known for taking out every top contender at featherweight, being the ultimate gatekeeper. But yeah, there's not much else for him. So Aljo moving up makes the most sense in my mind. Another fight, maybe, because they fought on the same card, similar timelines, him versus Giga Chikadze. If that Chikadze versus Yair Rodriguez fight isn't there, maybe you could make, if you really want to test Giga, have him fight Holloway. But
we saw what Calvin Kattar did to Giga, though. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And we saw what Max Holloway did to Calvin Kattar.
Calvin Kattar, yeah. So Holloway would abuse him. But with that being said, there's really nothing at featherweight for him.
Move up.
I guess, yeah, that's the last thing I have here in my notes is a possible move up to lightweight. I don't know what fight to make for him there at lightweight, but I'm sure they could find something. And there's probably a
Charles rematch if he loses. Poirier wants to fight.
Yeah.
Poirier saying he wants to fight. So
Poirier, he won't fight any up and comers at lightweight, and
it would be a big fight night main event for sure.
Yeah, and you can co-main that probably on a pay-per-view even.
I would think they would want to make that 5 rounds though, just because those guys are.
Yeah. Well, you can make it a 5-round co-main though, like they did with the Burns Bilal fight.
Woof.
But if it's anything like that, then we're good on that.
It won't be anything like that. Don't worry. No,
it won't be that.
No Max Holloway fight will be that boring.
No, certainly not. You won't see as bad as boxing out of any Max Holloway fight.
Bilal Muhammad versus Burns with one arm. That was
rough watch.
Very rough watch.
So yeah, I'd like to see. That'd be a fun fight to make. Holloway versus Poirier, a rematch. Yeah, man, I don't know. It's tough when you've beaten everybody, but you've also lost to the champ 3 times. It's tough.
I definitely want to see the Aljo fight though. That just makes the most sense because if Aljo can come up to 45 and get that big win, finally we'll have at least another number 1 contender at 45 there, which is needed desperately. Mm-hmm. So after Volk would beat Topuria, which we would assume would happen, never know. Topuria is good. He's up and coming. He has power, so you never know. But let's just assume Topuria were to lose that. Who else is Volk going to fight at that point? You got to get somebody up there, and maybe they beat Max. And I think if anybody at 45 can maybe have a chance against Max, it's a grappler. Aljo could definitely take him down. So that's probably the most stylistic matchup that could beat him because we see what he does at strikers,
Yeah, he's already cleared out every top striker in that division. Give him a grappler. Let's see what happens. Would be fun. Moving on, UFC 296, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor, seemingly announced. I don't want to say anything certain, but it seems like that's going to be the last pay-per-view of the year. I don't know how much Conor is going to be tested by USADA. I don't know. He's not going to have to enter that 6-month testing pool. It seems like a Brock Lesnar situation. But oh well. I'm just glad we're seeing Conor come back, take on Michael Chandler. It seems like that fight is going to happen at 155 since on the Fight Pass website it said Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor. It had Chandler's name first, which tells me it'll probably be at 155. MMA Guru pointed that out. It wasn't an original thought, but it was something I found interesting. So yeah, seems like it'll be at 155, but who knows? And who knows if this fight will even happen? I'm just going to assume it will, but
which also tells me Conor's off the sauce if he's planning to make 155 because we saw his steroid body and that man it looked like he would never be able to make 155 again. So if the USADA testing does start right now, let's assume it's starting right now because he finally is off the sauce and it's out of his system. And I've seen Instagram photos of him training and he does look skinnier now. So let's just assume he's off the juice and they're cutting him some slack with the testing. They let him take his roids for recovery, and then he did his little Roadhouse movie or whatever. And now, it's out of his system and he's back training, and it's going to be a clean. I don't know about clean because we've seen Michael Chandler too, but it'll be the last 3 months before the fight at least will be clean use out of testing. So
there we go.
Yeah,
that's good. We can agree on that. Some other fights they could make on that card. You got O'Malley and Cheeto. I think that would be obvious. I don't want to say it's a co-main because there's other fights you can put on there. There's other title fights that could possibly co-main that card. But it seems like O'Malley and Cheeto will definitely be on that card if it takes place. O'Malley wants it to happen. Cheeto will take that fight, no question. Should be an easy turnaround for both of those men. That's probably going to happen. And then maybe Yuri versus Alex on that card is the co-main. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I've heard either they want to fight later this year or like January of next year. So it'll definitely be on one of those two cards, either December or the first card of 2024. Yeah, Jesus. But sorry, so that's crazy. But yeah, that's a fight that could be made on that card. I don't know if they would do that though, just because for Conor cards they do love being boring and making it all about him and kind of doing bad fights. But you never know. So
it's the last pay-per-view of the year, though. They might save some for next year, but obviously Yuri wanted to come back before the end of this year. Alex, he'll make any turnaround, so there's no question he's game for that. O'Malley and Cheeto, they want to be on that card. And there's going to be a lot of big names that are going to want to be on that card. Not championship level fighters, but Ian Gary's probably going to push to be on that card if that's available. Paddy Pimblett could come back for that card. That could be his comeback fight. A lot of big names, not great fighters, obviously. Pimblett, but big names, big guys who will draw in pay-per-view buys. Obviously Conor will be doing the heavy lifting on that, but there will be a lot of guys that are looking to get their names on that card, especially because who knows how many fights Conor has left in him. And the UFC might want to build a giant card for him, considering he might be retiring soon.
I could see them putting him on UFC 300 though, which could be his next fight, and that would obviously, it doesn't matter who's on that card, he would probably be the main event no matter how many title fights there are. So that could be the turnaround after that, and then maybe especially if he loses to Chandler here. I mean, who are you even looking at him fighting anymore? He desperately needs this win, but yeah, you're right. How many Conor cards do we really have left? Maybe they do just start stacking them because, people want to fight with, on the same card as Conor. They want to be on the interview stage with Conor at a press conference with him, calling him out, whatever. So, it would be really interesting.
Absolutely. Moving on, talk about UFC Paris taking place this Saturday. You get the main event, Cyril Gane versus Sergey Spivak. What do you make of this fight? I'll let you go ahead first.
Spivak's looked improved for sure since his beatdown loss to Tom Aspinall. What was that, 2-3 years ago at this point? And obviously we've seen the path that Aspinall's been on. He got hurt himself, but before that he was just wrecking havoc against all heavyweights, really. I mean, and especially in his last fight against Tybura, he looked like even better than he did before. So, I'm not going to hold a Tom Aspinall loss over Spivak's head too heavily. And he's looked really good in his last few fights. I mean, taking out Derek Lewis like that. I know Derek Lewis was on a bit of a decline. But to beat down the Black Beast like that, and we've seen the holes in Cyril Gane's game in his past two fights, right? With Ngannou and John Jones, obviously. So that wasn't his last two fights. He fought Ty in between that, but against grapplers in his last few fights, it's looked a little shaky. And I'm not saying Spivak has some elite grappling here, but you don't have to have elite grappling against Cyril Gane, it doesn't look like. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's tough. I think Gane's defensive wrestling is probably, I want to assume it's improved since the Jones fight. I know there's questions about his work ethic a little bit, how hard he trains, but I do think he's put a lot more time in his time off since that Jones fight, which it has been a while. I mean, he didn't take any damage in that Jones fight, and it's been a while since then. It's been, I think that was in March this year, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been a while now, close to 6 months, over 6 months, I think. Pretty long layoff for a fight that he took no damage in. So I imagine he's worked pretty heavily on his wrestling defense since then. And Spivak's not a John Jones. He's not going to be able to take him down that easily. So we've got to see Spivak last, longer on the feet than John Jones did against Cyril Gane. I don't know how well he's going to be able to do that because I think Gane has a very clear advantage here on the feet against Spivak.
And I've never thought of Spivak as someone with good movement for a heavyweight, right? I mean, he is a big guy, so he won't compare to the speed of Cyril Gane if this stays standing. I mean, you could even compare it to when Cyril Gane fought Derek Lewis. I mean, he just picked him apart at range, and the speed was too much. So, if this stays on the feet and at range, Cyril Gane is going to put on a masterclass, and he's going to be right back in this picture. I mean, he's in his own country. It's a home fight for him. So it's definitely a big fight for him. He needs to get this win. But just seeing the path of these two fighters, I kind of fear for him for some reason. I don't know.
I'm going the opposite way. I have Gane winning this fight. I think he's going to be able to do enough to defend the wrestling. And Spivak, he's not going to just grab a single leg and take Gane down with ease. I mean, it's not like I don't want to put him on the level of like Almeida or something where he can just completely dominate in wrestling, or even John Jones. I don't see Spivak doing that. I see Gane keeping him on the feet for long enough to do some serious damage and pick him apart on the feet. I don't have him getting it done in round 1, but middle to the end of round 2, I see him getting a TKO win. I don't think he'll put him out cold. He doesn't usually do that, but I think he'll just wear down on him and make him quit.
And I'm feeling the opposite for some reason because I just really fear. I mean, whenever we've seen Cyril Gane fight these bigger heavyweights, or not even bigger heavyweights, because John Jones wasn't like abnormally larger than him.
Yeah,
it's just
about the same weight.
Right. But Spivak's a big guy. He probably hits the limit at 265 right there. And if he can just get him down and lay on him, and I mean, he gasses him out. We saw what Ngannou did to him in one of those last 3 rounds, just literally laying on top of him. So, if this gets in the later rounds here and Spivak's finding some success, I'm not even saying he is an elite grappler. I'm just saying if he wears him down, and I'm not saying it's going to go exactly like the Ngannou fight, but he can get him down and just lay on top of him. We haven't seen any like improvement in that part of Cyril Gane's game. So that's how I have it going. I hope he proves me wrong. He goes out there and knocks out Spivak. But I do want to see his grappling tested still. I do, because if he just goes out there and we don't know if the grappling's gotten any better, how is he ever going to fight these top level guys again, like an Aspinall, right? Who has the grappling? Yeah. So we need to see big improvements in Cyril Gane's grappling, or else I'm just going to keep being a non-truther and picking Sergey Spivak by decision this weekend.
Fair enough, man. And speaking of Tom Aspinall, as you mentioned with him, I want to see Gane win this fight because I have no interest in the Spivak rematch. With Tom Aspinall, I don't think we'd get that either. I think if Spivak were to win, I think they'd make Aspinall versus Pavlovich possibly later this year, maybe early next year. But I do want to see Gane win because I'd like to see Aspinall versus Gane. I mean, Gane is one of the best heavyweights on the feet, no question about it. One of the quickest heavyweights. His movement's incredible. His footwork's great. So I would like to see Aspinall against a guy who's really good on the feet. And maybe Aspinall can get that takedown and dominate him on the ground. But that'd be a fun matchup. I'd really like to see that. Probably sometime early next year, if I had to guess, if a Gane Aspinall fight. But that's another reason why I'm rooting for Gane here.
For sure. And there's no denying the striking ability. I mean, you don't see that at heavyweights. I know he's a smaller heavyweight. He's only in the 230s, maybe 240, right? But you don't see that speed at a heavyweights. So to get that out of a heavyweight, it's exciting, and you want to see it against other, good, heavy hitters like that, right? It's always the what if factor in Cyril Gane fights. But if the grappling doesn't get any better, then he's just not going to make it very far in this division. And I need to see improvements before I call for him to fight a Tom Aspinall with the grappling,
Yeah, I understand that. Moving on to the co-main event of this card. Manon Fior versus Rose Namajunas. Fior fighting in front of that Paris crowd. She got the home advantage here. Namajunas is back for the first time in well over a year now, fighting in a new division. I'm a little bit worried. I don't have the utmost confidence in her, especially because of her last fight against Esparza. Don't want to talk about that one at all, but good reason to have a little bit of doubts about her and her return. And if you're, moving up the rankings quick, undefeated in the UFC, she puts on a great performance in this fight, could be fighting next for the title.
Let's hope it's not anything, like a Rose fight like her last performance. I know you said let's not talk about it too much because, Rose has had exciting fights in the past,
Yeah.
but it feels like in big fights when, there's not a lot on the line for her. I don't know what it is. It's like when she's searching for the title,
Mm-hmm.
she goes for it. She goes for the knockouts. She goes for the exciting fights. And then when she's kind of just content with where she is and just, trying to defend her status, that's when she puts on duds. So hopefully she feels like she has something to go for here. At a new weight class, you never know. This division, it is kind of open. We talked about Blanchfield, obviously, but is she the true number one contender? Can Rose come in here, on away turf in France against a top contender, a French prospect, and knock her out? What if she knocked her out? Then she'd probably be next in line for a Valentina or a Grasso, whoever's the champ. So, it's a big fight. No doubt. I think, for either one of these ladies, if they go out there and win convincingly or, have a cool knockout or whatever, they could definitely be next in line, especially Fior. Just her being above Blanchfield already. If she could go out there and beat a former champ, I know at a lesser weight class, but still, like a big woman's name, and she's probably getting that title shot. So it's a big fight.
Yeah. I think if Fior were to get a knockout in this fight, which I think is a strong possibility, I think she's next in line. If Blanchfield would have had a more exciting performance or a more dominant performance, even you can make a case for her securing that spot for being next. She didn't have that, so if Fior goes out there, especially in front of that big crowd, gets a big highlight reel knockout or something, I don't know, something, or just a dominant performance, a clear cut win. I could see her being next in line. So yeah, she's 5-0 in the UFC. She's beat Mayra Bueno Silva, some other good names. She's definitely deserving. No question about it. If she were to go out there and win this fight convincingly, I think she's definitely deserving of it.
And yeah, like we said, this division is wide open. So whoever can go out there and put on a great performance, go put on a better performance than Blanchfield did, because while it feels like she should be next in line. If you can go out there and win in a more exciting way, then the UFC is probably giving you a title shot next, just for the highlight packages, right? So go out there. One of these ladies go out there and win in highlight fashion, and guess what? You're probably fighting Valentino or Grasso next. So
especially with the name factor too. If Fior goes out there and knocks out Namajunas, which is a former champ, it makes too much sense for her to be next in line for the belt.
No doubt.
Another fight we'll talk about on this card. Well, this is the last fight we'll talk about on this card. Not the most stacked, fight night card. Can't complain about it though. But Benoit Saint Denis versus Thiago Moises. Saint Denis coming off of a dominant win against Ismail Bonfim. Not something we expected at all, but he looked better on the feet. He took him down. He subbed him. It was a dominant performance by Saint Denis. So deserving of this spot on a big fight night card. Big things for him possibly ahead.
And Moises, whenever I hear that name, my mind immediately goes to when he got a main event against Islam Makhachev on a fight night. I can't remember if that was like the plan or if somebody pulled out, but just him being in a main event with Islam Makhachev and then getting ragged all the way he is. I know it's like a champ, and so and obviously Islam was on a rampage. He was pissed that he wasn't getting big fights, and so he just wanted to go out there and dominate. But I just can't get that fight out of my mind whenever I think of Thiago Moises. And so to me, there's just too much that points in the other direction of him winning. Saint Denis, home crowd, coming off a dominant performance, like you mentioned. It just makes too much sense that he's going to go out there and put on some fireworks, probably sub Moises. I know Moises, that's kind of his strength, is the grappling. But, just momentum is a thing, whether you want to admit it or not. And it just feels like maybe they're going in different directions. And Saint Denis has a big opportunity here to get that crowd raucous going, in Paris. So
I do think Saint Denis has more momentum, that's for sure. Coming off that dominant win against someone who was looked at as a huge up and coming prospect in Bonfim. I had high hopes for him, but he went out there and handled him. But Moises, although against much lesser opponents, he's coming off back-to-back subs. So he has, as you mentioned, he has that good grappling. But Saint Denis has great grappling too. I think that might cancel it. it might cancel each other out. And Saint Denis, I think, is better on the feet.
Yeah, definitely better on the feet. So, you get those grappler versus grappler matchups, and it kind of turns into bad stand-up sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think, Saint Denis, he can throw a punch. So, if this turns into a striking match, I definitely favor him as well.
Yeah, my prediction on this one is round 2 TKO, similar to the Gone fight. The same prediction, same round, same method of victory. I didn't say a prediction for the last fight we talked about, Fior versus Namajunas, but I have Fior by decision.
I'm gonna go Fior by decision as well. I think she needs it badly.
Yeah, and then in this fight, I have Saint Denis by round 2 TKO. Like we said, I think the grappling just cancels out, and I think we see Saint Denis just look much better on the feet.
I agree. I think he can get him out of there maybe round 1 with just a nice right hand down the pipe. Momentum is a thing.
Get a little bit of a hype train going, especially in front of that Paris crowd. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah, I'd like that. So Volkan Ozdemir, he's also fighting on this card. Not fighting a big name. Other than these 3 fights, the main card's kind of a little bit of a dud. But still really excited for these 3 main fights, and we'll tune in, of course, to the rest of the card. Who knows? Sometimes the fights that you don't expect to be good end up being the best.
It's always those cards where it's like, man, these are some stinkers where they just put on absolute fireworks, and then it's the big fights that always lay a dud in the main event or whatever.
Sandhagen fought, man.
The undercard
fight we paid to go watch in person. Yeah,
I know. The undercard was so great on that one. It seemed like there was going to be like a big finish, like a lot of finishes or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the main event was just a stinker. But
yeah, unfortunate. Which we'll give Sandhagen a pass, of course, because the elbow. But yeah, so we won't ramble too much about that fight. And I guess we'll end it on that note. Yeah, UFC Casuals episode 6. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you watched this far, and we'll see you guys next week.
Leave a like and subscribe, guys. Love you.
Sure. All right. See ya.
See ya.